For the project, we'll be looking at different types of animation, and I'm going to be talking through them with you. So we've got cell animation, multiplane animation, motion graphics, claymation, rotoscoping, 2.5 and 3D, and compositing, which is, yeah, I'll talk about that later. So the first thing we're going to talk about is cell animation, just because that's the first one on there. And cell animation is the art of creating 2D animation by drawing on hand sheets of transparent plastic, which are called cells, which is they're called, it's short for celloids, which is, yeah, celloid, which is what the piece of plastic is. So basically, animators would draw on a raft, or a draft drawings on these transparent sheets of plastic, and each cell features one drawing with an outline on one side of the plastic and colour is filled on the other side. These cells are then placed over a background and photographed in sequence. Yeah, like that. When played back at a speed of 12 or 24 frames, they create the illusion of movement. It's quite rare, to be honest, for cell animation to be used in modern productions, seeing everything is digital now, and well, it's a lot easier to do it by computers, because computers still use cell animation through 2D animation, which is just layering things up, which is pretty much what multiplane is as well. And so some of the things that, well, it was invented in 1938 by a man called, what's his name? I need to remember. It's it begins with G. Sorry. Anyway, so yeah, cells are just drawn a piece of transparent bits of paper, and they put over scenes, and that's how they're made. So that's that's basically what it is. And the inventors is a guy called Earl Hard and John Bray in 1915, and they created the cells, well, the bits of plastic, and they put it on this guy, Earl Hard. Anyway, so his first animation was, it was Bobby Bumps at a circus. So it's only a year after he invented it, and so you can see that that's the background. This elephant's just been drawn on a bit of cell and taken a picture of each movement. So that's basically what cell animation is. It's not used nowadays just because it takes a really long time to do a good production. For an example, Snow White was done by cell animation, and that took a long time to create. And so that these are the backgrounds. Then how they do it is, these are the rough drafts they have. Here we go, those bits here, they're cells. I'm not sure what that guy is doing. That's how he creates the art, by backgrounds, by the looks of it. But yeah, Snow White, which is Disney's first proper film, was used with cell animation. Most of the other earlier animations was made using were made using cells, and it was used a lot back then because that's like the main thing it was. The other thing that they used to create like moving cell things for like Bambi, this uses cell animation and like I should have really got this up, but anyway. This uses like cells, which you can see. This bit here, this is rotoscope. No, this is multiplane, which is when they move. The camera's still, they're just, with each frame, they're stopping it, moving each tree individually, so making the front ones move a little bit faster than the backgrounds to make it look like the camera's moving. It's actually a really clever bit of work, that is. Multiplane, the camera looks, well, it's designed like this, and so yeah, multiplane is a camera which is used for like traditional animation procedures that uses a number of pieces of artwork past the camera at various speeds and as a various distances from one another, so then it gives it a like view of movement, if that makes sense. So they would have, here you'd have like the front bit, then back bit, and then like the sky and back. You got to have like the foreground and the foreground, I think that's what you call it, and that's what it's used for there. So Bambi and all the other old what's it called, Disney movies were made using cells and multiplane. Sorry, I got rotoscoping on their mind for some reason. And so all this is created using the multiplane camera. Even that little water bit in the background, each of it's changed. Each of that is a different image, different painting. Maybe it's used over and over again, but you gotta give them credit, to be honest. The owl is created using the cells, so it's like flying at each different bit, placing on the background, and then it's taken a picture of. So this is all oil based, and that's done on a cell. Which is really impressive, to be honest. No, that's the wrong thing. So this moving bit here, this is using the multiplane by making this come bigger and the others coming further away. I did a bit of this animation on Friday with Warwick. So this, they had the character moving up, but they even have it there. Which is really awesome when you see how they made it. Yeah, so that's like cell animation and multiplane, because they kind of go both together, because they're like tied together really. I'm going to talk about motion graphics now. I will probably come back to the other two a bit later, just to make sure I've done everything about them, but I'll just go through everything so I know it's done. So motion graphics. So motion graphics is animation, but with like text as like a major component. And so like any film you watch will have a bit of motion graphics. Let's see. Let's look at the ending. Let's look at the ending credits. It's even this bit here. No, wrong thing. if it'll come up. Oh, I hate adverts. So motion graphics is like, actually no, these look like they're drawn. Never mind, maybe it wasn't used back then, but motion graphics is basically using text as the main component. It's like, so like ever since motion graphics first entered, there's been like a debate about between them and full animation. The opening, let's see. Anyway, I forget I said that. So motion, I've said this so many times, I keep going over, I'm sorry about this, but as I've said before, motion graphics is basically the use of shapes and textures to create moving images and things like that. So like, it's that way to communicate with the viewer and add a depth to the story together with music and effective, which like, it like goes with the music a lot. So motion graphics you see a lot in title sequences, when people create adverts, and endings quite often have motion graphics, which just have letters moving around, coming together, and things like that. A lot of things are using it. So there's the one by Psycho in 1960, which is an intro using motion graphics. This is one of the oldest ones. She's not in it. Because that's when it's used. Sorry about the noise, but anyway. That's like the earliest stage of motion graphics, which is actually even quite, I don't think even I can do that now. But I am learning, so yeah. Probably be able to do that in the future. So visual music, computer-generated motion graphics. So before computers were widely available, motion graphics were costly and time-consuming, limiting their use to high-budget filmmaking and television productions. Computers began to be used as early as the late 1960s as supercomputers were capable of rendering crude graphics. John Whitney and Charles Scurry can be considered early pioneers of computer aiding animation. In the late 1980s to mid 1990s, expensive priority graphic systems such as those from British-based Quantilles were quite composed in many television studios. The term motion graphics was popularized by Trish and Chris Mayer's book about the use of Adobe After Effects titled Creating Motion Graphics. This was the beginning of desktop applications which specialized in video production but were not editing or 3D programs. These new programs collected together special effects, compositing, which I'll be coming back to later, and color correction tool sets, and primarily came between edit and 3D in the production process. This in between definition of motion graphics, our resulting style of animation is why sometimes it is referred to 2.5D animation. Yeah, because you can see that's kind of 2D animation, but it's got like depth to it, so that's kind of 2D animation. Well, 2.5D animation. Right, so that's motion graphics. Claymation. Put simply, what I can't speak today. Wommis and Gromit, I think that's what they're called. They were created with claymation, and that's basically getting lumps of clay, creating characters with it, and stopping them and creating them frame by frame to create a moving character. Jeez, I can't type either. Anyway, so as I've said, claymation are just like these characters like this, which are balls of clay, which are molded and shaped to create characters, which are then placed in a composition in front of a camera, take an image of, and then moved slightly to create movement in creating things. So some of the older, this is like another use of animation. And so claymation is used quite a lot back. Yeah, I don't want you to go away. So like this is claymation. You just slightly move the clay bits, create movement, and take a picture of each frame after you move it. Like that. So you move it the tiniest bit, like this. So you get like this software or something. Like how cast clay at 100%. Anyway, so you get this ball of clay, you take an image, you slightly move it, and then you take another like video or image or something. Yeah, you move it again, and so on and so forth until you start creating something. This is also quite time consuming. I'm probably not going to do this for my production, but it does look quite cool. And for more stable things, they normally sometimes use a wire framing to help do a real life shape claymation, really. Let's go back from that guy. Wire skeletons. So it'd have these things, and they put clay over it just so it looks more real. So like that, really. And films like Wommis and Gromit, Shaun the Sheep, this film, Flushed Away, I think it's called, and it's mainly Listen to Caroline, yeah, Chicken Run, Fantastic Mr. Fox. I didn't know that was clay. We got Shaun the Sheep. He's not using clay, but these are kind of the same thing because they're like toy. Well, I'm not sure how that's made. But seeing it says it's clay animation, so it probably is, and they just add fur over the top of the clay. I'm not sure, but anyway. There's quite a lot of clay animation films. James and the Giant Peach, Wallace and Gromit, Corpse Bride. What else do I know? The Grand Day Out. Anyways, so there's a lot of clay animation films out there. A lot of famous ones as well. They're making them again even now. For like Coraline. Which you can see, it can sometimes be a form of art. Well, it is a form of art. So like this is a mixture between motion graphics there, or just like art. That's strange. Ooh. So claymation is also the same, a bit like stop animation really. So each of this is done frame by frame of moving it slightly out, taking pictures slightly out again, and doing another picture. So that's basically clay animation and like what's it called? Stop motion basically. Let's go to rotoscoping since I keep talking about it. So rotoscoping is an animation technique that animators use to trace over motion picture footage frame by frame to produce realistic action. Originally, animators projected photographs, live action movie images onto a glass panel and trace over the image. This production equipment is referred to as a rotoscope, developed by a Polish-American animator Max. I'm going to butcher this name. Flischka. Oh well. The device was eventually replaced by computers, but the process is still called rotoscoping. In the visual effects industry, rotoscoping techniques are manually creating a matte for an element on a fine action plate so it may be composite. No, I can't speak. Over another background. So basically, what they do is they have a live bit of footage and they draw over it frame by frame to create a realistic video. So this here is done by a person. So there's a person that they filmed beforehand, just walking around, laying down, taking a shot, and then they're drawing over it frame by frame by frame by frame. So then he's doing all of this done. It does look a lot more realistic because you get the actual real person and you just have to trace over them. I'm considering doing this for my animation, but it might take a bit too long. So that's basically what rotoscoping is. It's when you that's this one here, which is when you get a live action person, you draw over him frame by frame. Basically, you just get the basic size of him, and then you can draw whatever you want onto him. But his movement is still the same. Let's not listen to that. History. I'm gonna butcher this name. Edward. It's not Edward because there's an E8. Edward Muybridge was an English photographer, and he had some of his famous chronophotographic scenes painted on glass discs for the I can't speak today. The Zoobraxiscope production that he used in the popular lectures between 1880 and 1895. The first discs were painted on glass in dark contours. Contours? Yeah, anyway. This made between 1982 and... Wait, what? I've already said those words. They had been outline drawn by Erwin Faber. photographically printed on the discs and then coloured by hand, and these discs were probably never used in the lectures. By 1902, Nürnberg toy companies. Anyway, that doesn't matter. I'll just start a bit on the earlier procedures of rotoscoping. Techniques. So basically, rotoscoping has often been used as a tool for visual effects in live action movies. By tracing an object, the filmmaker creates a silhouette called a maquette that can be used to extract that object from a scene for use on a different background, while blue and green screen techniques have made the process of laying subjects and scenes easier. Rotoscoping still plays a large role in the production of visual effects imagery. Rotoscoping is a digital domain and is often aided by motion tracking and onion skinning software. Rotoscoping is often used in the preparation of garbage mats or other matte pulling procedures. That's like a bunch of stuff from Wikipedia, which is what I'm reading it from. But for me, I understand that it's basically just film something live, draw over the top of it, frame by frame, and it looks kind of cool. It seems we're doing it for a title sequence. I have no idea what I'm going to use that for, because I'm not very good at drawing. Whoa, what the heck? Anyway, that's basically rotoscoping. Right, so let's talk about 2D animation, which is like two-dimensional animation. It's basically an animation that took place in two-dimensional space. Modern 2D animation can be created by hand or computer animation software. The movement of the object requires one image to be followed by another with slight different positions, followed by another image in another position, and so on. It's traditionally animated drawn with simple motions. The object can only move in two axes, either up or down, left or right. They are generated by creating continuous consecutive images or frames, thus forming motion by each frame, showing the next in a gradual progression of steps. Unlike 3D animation, 2D animations are flat images that can move and are represented by height and width dimension, but not by depth. Basically, 2D animation is a flat surface, a bit like when you play like Mario Brothers or something. They're all flat. But so when you draw 2D animation, you can't draw 3D, but you can draw 2.5D. When you draw 2D, you can draw the whole body, but then you like cut off like this guy's arm. You draw the whole thing, the whole body, apart from the other arm, because you wouldn't need to draw it because you won't see it. But with 3D animation, I don't know why I'm talking to that, it would be generated anyway, like this, and you just move each bit individually. So that's basically what 2D animation is. Ugh. 2D animation is normally known as like the traditional animation. It's what all the old Disney movies were made using 2D. So like the sort of movies that are made using 2D, just for example, is Spirited Away, Lion King, The Iron Giant, The Ghost in the Shell, Charlie and Brown Christmas, Beauty and the Beast. They're all made by 2D animation. So you'd have them all on a flat surface like that. There's a bit of shadowing, but that's done using compositing, which I'll talk about later, which I can't even say the word, which is also part of 2.5D. Wow, okay. So yeah, 2D is like more of the traditional animation, and that's is used a lot more because it's easier to do. And as you can see from what I've told you, it's a lot like cell animation in the fact that you do frame by frame, background, foreground. Like that. Let's talk about 2.5D, which looks a little bit more like 3D. 2.5D animation is like a 2D animation drawn into a 3D space, as it involves the motion of 2D animation objects in like a 3D space. The trick lies behind the perspective and shadows of 2D animation objects drawn in 2D space that appears to be 3D. Animators use the impression of drawing 2D objects in the motion that appears to be moving in a 3D space, accomplished by using brilliant art skills in layering, shadows, perspective animations, morphing, and several other techniques. The result would create a fluidly movement, creating changes in depth that deceives us into looking at a 3D animation when it actually using 2D animation objects. 2.5D animation can be rendered by using shadow applied to a 2D object. This can be achieved by having the drawn object cast a shadow behind it on the background. Simple example would be drawing any subject on a white plain piece of paper and then adding in shadows that stretches behind it into the distance, a dimension that does not actually exist for the object, unlike 3D, which have 3 axes, but can imply, but we can, never mind. Your perspective on this object from 2D now appears to look like 3D simply by adding a shadow behind it. Programs such as Flash allows you to use the tool to generate 2.5D effects in both 2D and 3D animations by creating the false perspective, then animate the perspective changing for 2.5D effects. That was a lot of reading. I don't like reading out loud. So basically 2.5D is shadowing your character and making it look more alive, really. Let's look at some effects. Okay, never mind. Advanced 2.5D animation. What's the guy doing? What the heck is that guy doing? So basically it's moving shapes and giving it a bit of a different dimension by shadowing and things like that. Right, 3D animation. 3D animation or 3D dimensional animation is an animation drawn in a three-dimensional space. The object can maneuver in 3 axes rather than 2 as in 2D animations. 3D animations, like other 3D movies, you may have seen, allows you to create a realistic object that are more exciting. Different textures and lighting are applied to the objects created that appear solid and can be applied seamlessly into the live video elements. However, to create a beautiful, realistic 3D animation can only be limited by the capabilities within the program itself. A lot of time, effects, and resources are greatly needed towards building a successful 3D animation, and others may not be necessary as expected. Is that what it says? Well, anyway, so 3D animation is when it's basically computer animated. Is when you use generated animated images. Let's look at Wikipedia. It's the process of using generated animated images. The more general term, computer generated image, CGI. Wow, I didn't know CGI was actually never mind, of course it is. Basically, 3D animation is just having shadow, lighting, and different textures to make your characters seem more alive. So, like adding, let's see if we can find it. Adding hair on a dog. So this 3D animation, because you can see like the different hairs to make it seem more realistic and less cartoony. So that's basically what 3D animation is. It's like more three-dimensional anime. So basically it looks more realistic because of the CGI that's made. The hair looks more real, and adding textures to the fabrics and to the skin to make it seem more real, adding creases and things like that, so it doesn't look more fake, if that's the right word, because you can always tell if something's 3D animation is versus real. Let's see if this works. Yeah, that's a good example. So 2G is drawn flatly, and there's like just a little bit of shadowing just to show where the light is. But 3D it adds like different textures, like this. 2D you can't really add that much different textures really and things, but in 3D you can add like hair, shading and colour on the hats and like tie things, and shadows and shininess. But on 2D that you're quite limited on what you can do. So that's pretty much 3D animation, which makes it a lot more real. One of my like Tintin is looks quite real because of the way it's animated and the way it all moves. You see that the fabrics on its clothes, and how it's a lot different from what the original 2D series was about. I actually need to watch that again. I haven't seen it in a while. Anyway, so let's go to the last thing, which is which is compositing or composition. Composition. I can't say that word. I don't know why, but it's annoying me. So composition is the combining the visual effects from separate sources into single images, often create the illusion that all those elements are part of the same scene. Live action shootings for compositing is variously called chroma key, but it's green screen and other names. Today, most, though not all, compositing is achieved through digital image manipulation. Pre-digital compositing techniques, however, can go back as far as the track frames of Georges Méliès in the late 19th century, and some are still in use. I actually need a drink to speak properly, but I'll try and go through it anyway. So it's basically adding wind, it's adding the shadows that aren't there, colour grading, So yeah, it's basically like multiple layers of images or video elements to render a final still or moving image. The combination of layers can be physical or software-based operation. Rotoscoping is one compositing method. Compositing is often used for 2D content, layering multiple layers in print for still images in advancements. Memes and other wait, what? Why am I talking about memes now? Wow, so that's basically all it. So it's basically the combination of visual elements from separate sources in single images.
Or your dinner's on the table.
They have no respect, do they? Wow. So these are all. So compositing is basically adding elements that aren't there in there, basically. So if it's like in a forest, you would have like all the things that you would like draw the shading and things. But if you want to add like more, after you film everything, you go back and visually, computer, what do you call it? You add it yourself, basically. You can add like fog to make it seem more mysterious. You can add light to their face to show up their face. If that wasn't used, you can add like for Harry Potter, really, the spells that are used, that would have been used in the visual effects department, which is basically compositing. I can't say that word. But anyway, so it's basically doing all the special effects that aren't there. So if there's like a car moving off, they wouldn't necessarily have the smoke from the engine there, but they can add it visually afterwards. That's basically what all of them are. So to go through them all again in like a very small synopsis, cell animation is when you've got these layers of imageries which are, animation that are drawn onto cells, which are then put into sceneries which are hand painted by hand, and then they are shot frame by frame.
to create movement, really. Multiplane is the camera that captures the movement and gives more life to the cell image, really. So it makes things more alive. Motion graphics is just the animation of mainly text and shapes, and they're just like a bunch of funky animation, mainly for title sequences and adverts. Rotoscoping is when you have a live action person is where you trace over a person that's moving in real life, and then you draw over them and create them like a sketch, really. So it looks like you drew it, but you've actually got this shape right because you've got the person you've drawn over. A bit like copying and layering. So that's basically what rotoscoping is. 2D animation is like the traditional animation, which is a bit like cell animation, except this is more computer generated, because you do this all, well, not that. So the Lion King, the newer films, such as, I have no idea what it is, but the old films are like a mixture of, oh no. So classic 2D animation is basically flat, which can be put in the same thing as cell animation, because cell animation is 2D animation. It's just older. Then you've got 2.5D animation, which is just adding shadow to the text to make it, and dimensions to make it feel more alive and to give it depth, really. And 3D animation is just having the old image done, giving it textures to the clothings and face and hair to make it seem more realistic and alive. And compositing, well, I still can't say that word, is putting effects in after it's already done, so the CGI bit. So whether you'd have a green screen there, compositing would be, I'm going to call it that for now on, which would be placing the background in the green screen, adding fog, effects and other things like that to the movie. So that's all that I've done. That's all that it's asked, hopefully. Yeah, as I found examples of each of them. And so that's all. Thanks. Bye.